Welcome to Mind Matters, and thank you for joining Dan Ploger and myself, John Krotek. This podcast is where we discuss the critical social, economic, and spiritual issues that affect all of us. We, the people, are in a battle against the forces of entropy, forces that are hell-bent on gaining power for personal reasons, forces hell-bent on destroying the concepts of freedom and individual thought, forces which don't benefit the social order. Thank you again. Hey, Dan, good to see you, man. How's things going?
Hey, John. Things are good.
Awesome. Same here. Things are good. We're moving along and just trying to have conversations that open people up into using their critical thinking skills and some logic and reason with the things that we're seeing. Today, the subject, the question that we ask, this homophobe label, what does it really mean? We hear so much of it a lot lately. Definition of a homophobe is somebody that hates homosexuals, and that's pretty strong. But then again, we're going to get into that. And let me just give a brief background on what is prompting today's discussion. Recently, National Hockey League player with the Philadelphia Flyers, a defenseman by the name of Ivan Provorov, who's been with the league for 7 years, boycotted that organization's Pride Night in some pregame festivities, which basically had the players wearing Pride-themed jerseys and using sticks that were wrapped in rainbow Pride tape, right? And he boycotted the festivities. He would later go on to play in the game, and then after the game, he was asked about it. And his quote was, "I respect everybody and I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. That's all I'm going to say." And he didn't take any more questions about it. But obviously the backlash on social media was immediate. And those who support the LGBTQ community were quick to label Provorov as a transphobe. I have a little bit different take on it. I have that the man stood up for his beliefs, and I didn't see anything that even resembled hatred. It looked like more courage or bravery than it did hatred to me. But let's dissect that, the homophobe label, and isn't hockey really about competition and scoring goals and beating your opponent? All of these narratives that we're seeing advertised and at the same time exposed it blows my mind that just because somebody doesn't agree with your beliefs that somehow you hate them. What's the deal with that? And then talk about that, Dan. You had a really good thought on hate.
Gosh, a lot of things to unpack there, John. One is social media erupts in protest. If I've learned anything from Twitter, it's that there is no such thing as social media. It's something that's being controlled by a machine. Even if the messages originate from actual people, they've still been filtered and run through algorithms. So I think social commentary over social platforms is you're talking to a machine. So I don't be too incensed. Secondly, good for him. He stands up for his rights and his beliefs. But you describe homophobe as hatred of homosexuals. I guess that's probably the current message, but I think it's also fear. The phobia is, I think, has Latin or Greek origins, meaning fear. But nonetheless, so what? What's the consequence? I can be a homophobe. So what? I don't understand why that's important to anybody. And I have stood up consistently. I stand for my right to criticize anybody for anything. That's called freedom, freedom of speech. So, what's the issue? Great, it certainly doesn't impact me.
You know, some
I reserve my right to insult anybody at any time, and in return, I grant them that right. So fair is fair, but I'm not sure fair is when you are fighting against an algorithm or acres of computers, supercomputers that are running through what you said and negotiating and categorizing and putting it into put it out there again, out of context. And wow.
yeah, wow. You know, there's some things to unpack there too. And you raise some good issues. You know, you make some good points. Well, even like the characterization of the name calling and the labeling and the demonization of those who don't necessarily agree with you. You know, if we can dig a little bit deeper, we often see that that's a tactic of communism or fascism or collectivist, or anybody that's in a group kind of groupthink scenario, that that tactic by name calling is somehow supposed to empower us even more. And like you say, we're entitled to our beliefs, and if we hate somebody, so what? Isn't that the beauty of being a human being? Or we don't want to hate, but some people take it to that edge. But so what?
Well, and you and I profess to be pro critical thinking. Well, what's the adjective there? Critical. So you got to be critical, folks. If you're going to be intelligent, you've got to be critical. So
even the scientific method is all about being critical and using logic, which often can be critical, and to then translate that into reason so that we can make informed or intelligent decisions on anything that we see. And we throw religion in there. That's a whole other discussion on somebody's religion or spiritual beliefs. And if they don't agree with the things that are coming out of the LGBTQ plus community, they have that right.
Absolutely. I heard one cross-dresser, performer who was talking about the benefits of drag and how he enjoys it because he can become this other person. And the brief experience I've had with acting and performing is that's the whole idea of performing. I know that I used to have horrible stage fright when I'd sing or something in that order to a crowd, but it was what I found I had to do was put myself in a mental place where I'm not Dan Ploger. I'm somebody else. I'm a rock and roll singer who's up here doing this act, and whatever I do is not Dan Ploger. I don't have to be self-conscious about it. It's this other guy. Well, what I just described is what exactly that man in drag described. What he said was not only true of dressing and performing in drag, it's true of performing, period. How many famous introverts are there that are famous people in the world of entertainment? Bob Dylan is one that comes to mind, but we can think of hundreds of others. That man is so self-conscious. And so it finds it so difficult to think on his feet that it's obviously when he's performing, he's not Mr. Zimmerman, he's Bob Dylan. And that's how it works. That's what performing's all about, guys. So, okay, you perform in drag and you get that. Well, most of the rest of the people that have had any experience performing know that it's true of all performing. So,
yeah,
that's the news.
That's a really deep thought there, and even to push it even an inch further. And so if I'm a parent of a third grader and and I don't want these kind of performers performing in front of my children, it doesn't mean that I'm a homophobe. It just means that maybe I want arithmetic and handwriting being taught or science or something and not some type of performance by a person that's acting out some fantasy,
Right.
God.
And another irony of the hockey is that men have a natural sense of aggression and competition. And women have been so fast to call this toxic masculinity. Well, they'll criticize and badmouth that behavior until a war breaks out historically. Then all of a sudden, hey, where have all the young men gone? We need them. The sport is merely it takes the place and satisfies this need for competition in a healthy manner in which people aren't being shot and killed. So it's a little ironic that they would be promoting female values while they're dressed in their hockey gear, prepared to go out there and smash the teeth out of their opponents.
It's just insane, and think about that. You raise a really good point, Dan. So everybody wants it milk and vanilla until the real stuff hits the fan, right? But we've emasculated all of these men, young men, middle-aged men, older men. We've emasculated them because we want them to fall into this mantra. And then when we really need them to be men, they're not men anymore. They've been so watered down. They're skating around the rink with a rainbow taped hockey stick.
What does that mean?
It's madness. So, we can make this a short one today. This is kind of, we don't mean to make fun of anybody in any community, and we respect people's rights to have their beliefs. So let me ask you this, Dan, close this out. So the homophobe label, what does it really mean?
Well, it doesn't mean anything. It's like racism. It's been overused and it's become a trope and it's a cliche to the point where it no longer has meaning. The same as racism. What does it mean? It's just something you call somebody that you don't like. That's all. But go back, sticks and stones break my bones, but names will never hurt me.
Yeah. So use your brain. Your mind matters. Stand up for your beliefs. And what difference does it make what people call you? Thank you, Dan, for that very stark reality. And that's things that Dan and I do. We bring stark realities to conversations. Stand up for your beliefs. It doesn't matter what people call you. You deserve and have the right to believe whatever you want to believe. Thanks, Dan.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of Mind Matters. Use your critical thinking. Use logic and reason. Make your own determinations on the critical issues. Stay alert. Stay alive.